Hello. For the Lab 5, I'll be going step by step. So the first one is start MySQL workbench. Log into the MySQL server using the connection we created in Lab 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and log into the MySQL workbench that the connection that I've created in the Lab 1. So this is the connection I created in Lab 1. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this. So the next instruction is use SQL commands to create the Jaggi database. It can be found in the book. So I'll be using a SQL commands to create the Jaggi database. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll do create database Jaggi. I'm going to end it with a semicolon. It ends the line. So to check whether it's there or not, to check whether the database Jaggi has been created or not, I'll be selecting this part and run this. So I got a green check mark saying the database has been created. I can see I have the other database over here. If I refresh it here, I'll see Jaggi. So that's that. I created database Jaggi, and the next one is use SQL commands to create all tables in Jaggi database. So I'll be creating the tables. I'll probably come back and forth with this command here, with this ER diagram for my commands. So I can see the entities and like the attributes of the Jaggi database. So I'll be creating tables on the basis of that. And let me first do what I want to do, because I'll be using I'll be using database Jaggi. I want to make sure I'll let the MySQL know, the workbench know that I'm using Jaggi, so that I won't be prompted to any errors. So I'm gonna just make sure that it's notified that I'm gonna use Jaggi. Okay, so let me start by creating the table. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a table called vendor. That is the first table I'll be creating. So this is the table with the vendor ID and vendor name. And create table vendor, and I have, let me put those in parentheses. Let me go ahead and do vendor ID and char 2. The value is not null, so I'm gonna do not null because the values are not optional in this case. Okay, so I go to the next step where I go ahead and create vendor name. Vendor name. So vendor name, I'll be having varchar 25, and the value is not null in this case as well. Okay. So all right. So the vendor, the table vendor, has vendor ID and vendor name. The primary key in here is a vendor ID, so I'll be declaring that as well in the using the MySQL commands. So the primary key is vendor ID. I'm gonna close with the parenthesis and double quote the parenthesis that I've opened over there, and use the semicolon to break the line. So by this, I should be able to see the vendor table in there. Let me go ahead and flash this, and then I'm gonna go ahead and do this. Okay, I can see all the green check marks. So I think the table vendor is already created. So if I refresh it over here, under the tables, I can see vendor. I only have vendor right now because I just created vendor. Another one I'm be creating is called a category. So for the category, I have category ID and category name. So I'm gonna go ahead here and just do category ID, and category name. Okay, looks like it. And the primary key for this is category ID. Okay, so let me do UJaggy, and then let me run this code. Okay, it looks like the category ID has been successfully created, as I see the green check marks. Let me just clear these. And before I go any further, let me check if the category has been created or not. Okay, I can see category over here. So I created vendor, I created category. Now I'd like to create another table called product. So product has product ID, product price, and product name. So let me go in here and do product, and this one has product ID. Oops. 3 and not null. Then it has product name, and then that's excuse me. Product name has Orchard. Not null. Product has product ID, product name, product price. Product price. That's numeric. And then I can do excuse me. Okay. Product has product ID, product name, and product price. And also to see, this one is involved in one-to-many relationship. So this right here, the primary key of the vendor, will be the foreign key over here. So I'll have to create the vendor ID as well. So I'm going to go ahead and do vendor ID. And then not null. So let me see if the product is involved with any other one. So it's involved with category too. The category ID is also with the one-to-many relationship. So the primary key over here will be the foreign key for this. So I'll have the category ID as well. Category ID and not null. Okay, so I've created the category. I put the category ID in there too because this is the what you call this is the there are the foreign keys. So I'll have this one as well. Primary key in here in this case is product ID. So the primary key is product ID, and I'm gonna go ahead and do foreign key. Foreign key here is One is vendor ID. One is vendor ID. We're also gonna let our table know that vendor ID, it is a foreign key. It references as vendor, which has vendor ID. So okay, so I'll do the same for the category ID as well. Foreign key. Yeah, category ID. Category ID, and close this, and it references PRENCS references category, the category ID. Okay, so I'll check if we're able to create the table product or not, but before that, I'm just gonna make sure I have typing getter. Okay, this looks good, so let me use Jaggy again. Let's see if we are able to create the product or not. Okay, it looks like we're able to create the table called product. If I refresh it here, I can see the product. So the next table I'm going to create after product is called a reason. So for the reason, probably I have the reason ID. Probably have the reason ID. Okay, there's something up with this line. I have reason ID char to not null, and I also have for the reason. I have reason ID and reason name. Bar char is 24. I'm gonna do not null. I'll be getting rid of all these. And then the primary key here is reason ID. Okay, and a semicolon to break the line. So this is what I have. I'm gonna use Jaggy for this again, and I'm gonna do this to see if I'm able to create the table called reason. Okay, I'm successfully able to create the table called reason. So this part is done. I'll be creating the next one called store. So let's see the store. Create table called store. Store has store name, store gib, store ID. Store ID char we just put the bar chart. Let's do varchar and 3, then not null, then after store ID we have store gem, store gem, store gem, and store gem, and then I'm going to car 5 not null, and then I'll look what store is involved with. Store is involved with the reason in one-to-many relationship. So store is the one with the many sides. So the primary key of the reason, that is reason ID, will be the foreign key for the store. So I'll have the reason. I'll create the reason ID and then do char 1 and then not null. So the primary key here is this primary key here, store ID. Primary key here is store ID. Okay, so the foreign key here is a reason ID. Reason ID that references reason that has reason ID. Okay, I'm gonna double code this and then do that. I'm trying to see where I made the mistake. So key. Let me see the code here. Okay, so I'm gonna use Juggy again, and to create the table store, I have store ID, store gem, reason ID, and the primary key is a store ID, and the foreign key is the reason ID, which represents reason ID. So I'm gonna run this. So if I run this successfully, it gives me green check mark, which means the table has been created. I can see the store in here now. Okay, so I'll be creating another table after store called customer, this one right here. So the customer has customer ID, customer name, and customer chip. So here I created customer. So this one has customer ID. Just get rid of this line type. So this one has customer ID, not null, and customer ID. After customer ID, we got customer name. That's probably varchar, and it's 15. Then it's not null. Customer ID, customer name, and I think it's customer chip. Yes. Customer chip is char. Okay, so let me get rid of these. And the primary key here is customer ID. We don't have any foreign keys in this case, so I'm gonna do that, and that. Let me just make sure it's not involved in many relationship with any other ones. So when I run this, let me just clear this. When I juggy is fine. When I use this, you should be able to see the customer in here. So it runs successfully. When I refresh it, I can see customer. Okay, so the customer has been created. Another one I'm going to create is a sales transaction. So the sales transaction is right here. It's involved in many relationships with the store and the customer. So its attributes are TID and TDate. This is probably transaction ID and transaction date. So I'm gonna do cut these all. Okay. So I have TID and I got var char 7, var char 8, and then I got not null. Come on. Oh, gosh. Not null. And then I also got tdate. I got tdate. Tdate is just gonna give it date. I'm gonna do not null, comma. Then the sales transaction has customer ID and store ID. So I'm gonna do store ID varchar 3, and I'm gonna do not null, comma, and then I'm gonna do customer ID, it's store ID, and then I'm gonna do customer ID char, and then I'm gonna do not null, and then in this case I'm gonna go ahead and do primary key, and then per the primary key it's TID, comma, and then for the foreign key I got 2 foreign keys. Foreign key I have customer ID, that their preferences, customer ID. I have another foreign key, and that is store ID. It references store store ID. Double quote. Okay, so I'll be using Jaggy for this one as well. Let me try to run this and see if sales transaction comes up there. Okay, it's successful. So let me refresh this and I see sales transaction. When I see sales transaction, okay. The next table I'll be creating after sales transaction is includes. Includes is the one. This one is the one. Because they're involved in many-to-many relationship, we created a brace over here. So quantity is one of the attributes, and the product ID and TID are the foreign keys for this. So we're going to create includes in here. Create table for includes. Create table called includes. Okay, so the includes has product ID, it has product ID, and what else it has? It has TID. Okay, it has product ID, TID, and it also has quantity. That was its own attribute. Quantity is integer, and it's not null. Okay. Primary key here. Primary key in this case are both of the foreign key, both of the primary keys of the product and transaction, sales transaction. So I'm gonna go ahead and do product ID, comma, transaction ID, and then it has foreign key. Foreign key is one of them is product ID, that references product ID that references product, product ID. Okay, so this is what okay, another foreign key here is TID, that references sales transaction, was it sales transaction or sales? Yeah, it was sales transaction. Let me break the line. So for this, let me just clear these. I'll be using Shaggy again. So there's Shaggy, and I'm trying to make a table called includes because it was from the brace table. So I'll be creating that one. If I run it successfully, when I do here, I can see the includes has been created. Okay, so that completes this part of the 3. Use commands only to create all tables in Shaggy database. Okay, here we have all the list of tables. Category, customer, includes product, reason, sales transaction, store, and vendor. Those are the entities, and they are created as a table in here. Okay, so for this 4th question, use SQL commands only to populate the tables. I will be using use Jaggy. And what I'll be doing is I'll go with the vendor first. So vendor has 2 columns, vendor ID and vendor name. Insert into vendor and values. So I know that we need two things to be created in the columns vendor. So I'll name it probably QQ. That's the ID that I want, and the name. Let me just name it the vendor name. What do I call it? Favorite. Okay, it's probably the brand. Favorite. Okay, so that's what I'm gonna create, and I'm gonna close it with a semicolon, end it with a semicolon, and I'm gonna create another one too, called insert into. I'm trying to populate at least two values, so insert into values, and if I do here, I'll do the code for this is probably QP, and I'm gonna keep, and then the brand is Adele. Okay, so I'm gonna do that, and if I do this, if I first use Juggy, this is that, and if I do this, they are created successfully. If I want to see if I have created them properly, I can do select star from vendor. So this line right here should give me the table that has the vendor ID and vendor name. So these were the one that I already did in the practice, but this is the one that you can see that I just created right now. Okay, so if I want to go again, I'll go back to the category. So let me see where's the category. So the categories has category ID and category name. So if I just want to go here, and if I do insert into, we just insert into category, insert into category values. So for the category, we got category ID. So probably the ID will be something like CC. Okay, and the category name, I want to put it as a book. Okay, so if I put the semicolon and I go again and do insert into CC, comma, book. It just has category ID and category name. So if I go here, insert into, how about I think the category, this one's already created. Let me do boots. If it changes, CD, that, comma, space that, BOOTS, boots, and semicolon. Insert, okay. Insert into more category and the values. So let's do DD, comma, boots and socks. Okay, I'm sorry, this cough. Okay. If I do this, it's gonna use Jackie. If I do this, let me see. But let me first remove these if it comes up with any errors. So if I do this, it's actually creating the values. I don't know if for some reason it's just giving me this, but it has the values. If I want to do, the next thing I want to do is go and insert into product. So if I do insert into products, insert into products, values. So where I have products right here. I have the product ID, product name, product price, and vendor ID, and a lot of things. Okay, so if I do this, so product ID, I may put like 1 okay, and comma, product name, let me put it, product name, let me put it Suze, okay, and then comma, product price, let me just put it $100, and comma, $100 and space, oops, and then vendor ID. If I just go ahead and put the vendor ID QQ, okay, and comma, category ID. So category ID, let me just put CD, comma, and then that, and this is that. Okay, so if I do this, it's gonna insert the product values. If I want to do this all over again, insert into product, and values. Instead of 11, it's, let me just put 13 or 15, comma, and then instead of shoes, let me just put gloves, gloves, and then the price probably like $30. The vendor, maybe it's QP here, or QQ again. We can use anything, and then probably for the values category, let me just go ahead and do DD, that as the, okay. So if I just do this, it's just gonna insert the product values. That's how we insert the product values. If I just go ahead and run this, let me see if it works. Oh, I gotta use Jaggy first. Then if I do dim, table error code choose 100 QQ CD. So what's up for this one? Oh, my bad. It was not products, it was just product. Oh gosh. Okay, so this is just product, my bad. Okay, the product has been created. So the next one we're gonna do is for the reason. So let's see where the reason is. Oh, it's right here. So the columns for the reason are reason ID and reason name. So I'm gonna go ahead and do insert into a reason, and the values. So for the reason, I'm gonna go ahead and I just need to have reason ID and reason name. So for the reason ID, I'll just do D, comma, and another colon in Dallas. So this, and semicolon. I'm gonna do another one called insert into reason, and then I'm gonna do values. I'll be doing A, comma, Austin. Austin. Okay. This one's already created, so I think it's just gonna give me the error. Let me see though. So I'm gonna get Jaggy. I'm gonna do this and see if it prompts me any error. Yes, it's a duplicate key entry, but this already exists. So if I just do this, so Austin, let me just put yes, or why don't I put V? Let me just so and the Vegas. Okay. Comma, semicolon. So this already exists. So I'm just gonna D already exists. If I just gonna oops. If I just do this, it's gonna run. It's successfully created. So I can use D and Vegas for that. So if I want to create a store, insert into store values. So for the store, what I have is I have store ID. So store ID, I can keep let's put this S1, comma, store ID is done, and then store zip, it's let's suppose put 75221, okay, comma, and then if I gotta put the reason ID, let me just put the D and close it, this, okay. So again, if I want to do insert into store and values, so if I do S2, comma, and the zip code, can I put 75111, comma, V in here. Okay, let's try running this, and if it works or not. Okay, the store values are created as well. So if I want to go ahead and do create the customer values, I can just do insert into customer values. So for the customer values, I have just close this door, and if I go to the if I see the customers columns, I have customer ID, customer name, and customer zip. So customer ID, I can keep this one does not have any foreign keys. Okay, so the customer values, customer ID, what I can put is 1, 2, 3. Okay, comma, customer name. Put my name, and then customer zip. I'll just go ahead and put 75111, and I missed here. So if I just go ahead and put this, and if I want to put something like insert into customer values 2, 3, 4, comma, and Tina or Tia, I'll just put Tia, and then their zip code is 75221, maybe. Okay, so if I do this, it should run. Okay, it does run. I do for the customer. So another one I can do is so insert into sales transaction and values. The columns we got is are TID, TDate, store ID, and customer ID. So TID is the transaction ID. So we can go ahead and put that T112. Put T112, comma. For the transaction date, the date is 2020 04/14. Oh, it's month, year, month, and date. So I'm just gonna put this date here, and oh, actually, I'm gonna do that 2020 04/14. Okay, and I'm gonna use comma and go, and then store ID that we have is S1. So I'm gonna use that, and what I have, the next one is customer ID. Customer ID I have is 1-2-3, and then this, I go here, and then I can also do insert into sales transaction values. So in here I can do T113, and the date I can put is 2020 01/15 maybe, and the store ID I can go ahead and put S2, comma, the customer values I can put 2-3-4 semicolon. So if I use Jaggy, just trying to make sure I'm using Jaggy, and then if I do this, oh, I'm not missing anything. So if I do this and run it, so it says for the T112 for sales transaction it's a duplicate, but if I want to do T115, pretty sure they don't have anything, comma, that, comma, that. Okay, so this will be fine now. If I do clear, if I just run this window now, okay, very much. So I've created the sales transaction as well. If I want to go ahead and do into values, insert into includes and the values. So includes has, for the columns, includes has product ID, TID, and quantity. So product ID, I gotta see what are the product IDs. So so it's probably 11, and then comma, product ID, TID, transaction ID. So so TID we have is T115, and quantity. So quantity was from, not from store. I think it was from product. Oh, quantity was itself. So in the quantity, I'm gonna just put like 10. of them. And then if I do that and that, and also if I do insert into, if I do insert into includes values. So another one ID I have is 15 and comma transaction ID T113, and then if I do comma and if I do quantity 5 of them, I can just do this and I can run this. Cannot update or why foreign key constant dragging constants. Insert into includes values. Oh, this one was not updated, that's why. I'm sorry. So if I do this now, it's gonna work. Okay. So that is all to populate the data. If I want to see any of the data, so suppose if I want to see sales transaction, I can do select from sales transaction. If I do select from sales transaction and select this and run it, we'll see the whatever the data that our the columns that we have in our table. So this is how it works. And another question we have, I think it was question 5. Okay, I'll just be bad at using this. Okay, no worries. If I go here, after you populate the Jaggi database, customer write and run the SQL and accomplish the following task. Okay, display all records in the customer table. If I want to display the records in the customer table, what I do is instead of sales transaction, I just do customer. Okay, so it's asking me to display all the records in the customer table. So I want to display this. I'll do run, and it just gives me Bindu and Tia. That's one of the names that I added. Next question it has is display all the customers whose name starts with letter T. So for this, I'm gonna do select from customer where customer name like T percentage sign. I'm gonna use this one. Hopefully this filters out the name. So if I use this, it just gives me the name for Tia. So that's my customer whose name starts with T. And it's also asking me if I could insert 2 numbers to the customer table. The customer information is below. So I can just do that by going to insert into, and let me open the customer here. Customer has columns customer ID. So insert into customer values, okay, and I just like to do this uppercase. Insert into customer values, Customer ID given is 23555, comma, as customer name. Customer name is Mike, comma, customer JIP, it's 60633, and I close it with this one and break the line with semicolon, and then I also do insert into customer values. I don't think there's a space in here. And then I do 23666, comma, have Mike, and then I have Susan, comma, and her zip code is 6644. I'm really sorry. 6644. Okay, so comma semicolon. So if I do this, I don't think that really matters, but I'm just gonna two, three, was it 555? Come on. I think this is 23555. His name is Mike, and zip code is 60633. And then semicolon. So if I run this, just use Jaggy first, and then clear them. Let me run this, what it says. Okay, both Mike and Susan are added. So if I want to see the list of the customer table, the list of the people and their ID and then their zip code, I can just do select star from customer, and I can select this and run it, and then it gives me the list of everyone who I have added to the customer ID and customer table. So this is it. Thank you.